We're good. Okay, so good morning, good afternoon, good evening from wherever you're joining us in the world. My name is Ben Lamoth. I'm the leader of the Tampa Pardot User Group, and we have a guest presenter today. Their name is Hollie Fitzpatrick, and they are going to be here sharing some information about B2BMA, doing some demos and trying to kind of demystify B2B marketing analytics. So without further ado, Hollie, feel free to introduce yourself and take it away.
Yeah, my name's Hollie. I'm the solutions consultant at MarCloud Consulting. And today I'm just going to run through some really simple recipes and how to make those into lenses for B2BMA, so business to business marketing analytics in the Analytics Studio in Pardot. So I'm going to share my screen. Okay, and is that visible to everyone?
Yeah, I can see it. Yeah, we can see it.
Okay, perfect. So first things first, I'm just going to show you 4 different recipes, and then we'll kind of walk through how to set them up and visualize them in B2B. So on the first pop-up screen, just head down to Data Manager. And then we've got recipes on the left-hand side here. And I've already set this one up with a couple of different recipes within it. But if you don't have a new recipe, just top right-hand corner here, so new recipe. And I've done 4 here, so 2 of them are campaign-based, one of them is custom redirects, and the other one is account-based with opportunity information. So for the first one, this basically pulls through your campaigns and then adds the parent campaign from that, so that then you can build a lens to kind of delve into the levels of your campaigns from one dashboard, which is something you can also do in Salesforce reports, but I think having the visual element in a B2BMA recipe just makes it a little bit nicer. So first thing you want to do is add input data, and then just type in the word campaign. And when you're making a new recipe, if you want to pull in kind of all campaigns, you want to pull it through from the SFDC local campaign node. This pulls through kind of all campaigns that you have if you have connected campaigns enabled within your org. So as the main view node, you want to have campaign ID, name, and parent ID, and then any other kind of custom info you'd like to see. So all the default fields are in here, like your expected amount and the number of sent, etc. But for the purposes of today's demo, we're just going to have the basic ones that I showed selected just then. So once you have the 2 different nodes added, you basically want to select the new node, and then you want to select a join and drag and drop one node onto the other. That will then give you a new join node. And then you scroll up to kind of see the different join types and the join keys. So the join type is how you'd want the nodes to be connected to each other. So the basic lookup function gives you, for every kind of data input on the left, it connected to one matching on the right. And it will actually show you here which one is the right-hand side. So because these are both the same nodes, it doesn't really matter so much because they're identical. But if you had different nodes, you'd have to pay attention to the order of this. So the second campaign node in this case is being attached to the first one. That's called the grain. So you can actually see the way I've set it up here. The grain is starting from this node across to this way and adding additional ones onto that. And that just helps you to kind of bear in mind which element you're actually focusing on and which one you want to report on once you add it into the dashboard or into a lens. So for the purposes of this one, I'm just going to keep it as a lookup. And the campaign node for the first campaign is parent campaign ID, and we're connecting that to the second campaign's campaign ID. And you can see what that does in the right-hand side column here. So for each campaign on the left-hand side of the recipe, we've got all the different names, and then a parent campaign ID, and then that connects to the right-hand side. And I made a test parent campaign for the website tracking campaign just for the purposes of today. So once you're done with that, you can scroll down and press apply. It's not letting me because I've already kind of run this, but if this was a fresh recipe for you, you would be able to add that in. Then you do the same steps. So click here, and then we're adding a new transform node. And a transform node allows you to change the attributes of the data as you go. So I'm going to pull this up. And you have a couple different options for transformation nodes. So you can trim, you can substring, split, transform to uppercase or lowercase. You've also got a lot of different functions here, etc., etc. You can use different formats. You can change dimensions to measures and measures to dimensions. But for here, all we're going to do is change this one. So I've already done this, but what you would want to do is change the attribute. So you can click up here. So click into the column itself and then click on Edit Attributes. And here you'll be able to change the label as well as the API name. And this will make it a lot easier for you, especially if you have a recipe with a lot of different columns, to keep track of which one is which if you've connected many different nodes together. So just name this parent campaign, click Apply, and then zip out of that. And finally, click onto that again, click an output node, and then you can save the new recipe into an output. And for this one, I've named it Campaigns with Parents, saved it into my private application, and then we just kept the default things of dataset, sharing source, etc. You don't really have to change these. You can add a security predicate if you'd like only certain users to be able to access this, but for today's purposes, we're not going to do that. And that is recipe 1. So this will draw through all your campaigns with a parent level campaign. And you could actually kind of stretch this on for as many different levels as you'd like. So you could add in a third parent, a fourth parent, and go down numerous levels, each time adding a transform node to just make sure that you're labeling the levels of campaigns as they go down.
Hey, Hollie. Before we run forward, I just want to kind of take a level set here. If you have questions, feel free to put them in either the comment area or I open up the Q&A. This is super interesting stuff. It is. I know that B2BMA can be a little overwhelming if you're not accustomed to it. If you wouldn't mind, Hollie, if you could go a little bit deeper into specifically why would somebody not, I mean, beyond what you've created here, like generally speaking, if someone goes into B2BMA, what is the typical use case or benefit of creating a recipe as part of your kind of dashboard building? Like, why would somebody say, oh, why would a recipe be important versus a lens? How does a recipe and a lens work together? And just some high level stuff, just so we kind of level set.
Yeah, sure. So essentially, you'd want to build a recipe for anything that kind of doesn't already pre-exist in the org, or whenever you'd want to share data from different objects that don't necessarily already have a data node within B2BMA. So once you kind of load out Pardot, it does give you a lot of pre-formatted things such as the account-based marketing information and multi-touch attribution, etc. But for things that kind of aren't applicable to those elements or that can't be easily pulled from one of those elements, you'd want to create a custom recipe. And then at this point where you kind of save the recipe into an output, this then creates a new data set, which if you go into data assets in the data manager, you'll be able to see all the different data sets that you have. And in order to use information in B2BMA, we always recommend having a data set as opposed to just pulling in the kind of blue icons, which are the actual object information from Salesforce, because these tend to have hundreds, if not thousands, of rows of information. They're quite large, they're quite clunky, and they take a long time to pull through. So they'll really slow down your recipes. So always kind of save them into a data set first so that you can have much kind of cleaner, quicker access to your dashboards. And then once you've got these data sets, you can make a lens from those data sets to kind of visualize the information a bit more quickly and easily and share them with other members of the team. Or you can pull those lenses or queries into a dashboard to show multiple different pieces of information together.
Thank you. That's super helpful. Because B2BMA is only as good as the data that it has available to it to make the kind of dashboards and kind of visualizations. That's something that can be sometimes a little harder to understand if you're new to B2BMA, because I mean, Pardot for a while was selling B2BMA to anybody, literally anybody. And so they would say, oh, cool, I've got B2BMA. I'm going to create something cool. And then they immediately realize that it's not nearly as kind of clicks. It's not as clicks, not code as traditional Salesforce reports. There's definitely more code and more kind of levels of complexity involved to be able to manipulate the data. And so having Hollie kind of walk through some of this fundamentals of how to of what a recipe is and how to use it, because recipes can take some of the complexity, instead of saying, oh, I need to grab this data, you can say, okay, I'm going to build a recipe. That's going to take a little bit of this, a little bit of that, and the output is going to be this thing that I can use to build a visualization that specifically meets a specific use case and criteria. There's a question Brandon is asking: is there a best practice around naming the outputs, or is it output 1, output 2, etc.? What is the impact of your naming criteria?
Yeah, so I would say in something like this, so I've just made 4 kind of mini recipes within one recipe set, if that makes sense. So I haven't named the outputs because I'm kind of aware of where I'm pulling them in and it's only going onto one dashboard. But if you had a much more complex recipe with, maybe 20, 30 nodes, which you can definitely get into, and you had multiple different dashboards, multiple different places where these could sit, I would very, very strongly advise you to have a proper naming convention. So this may not be the best example, but in the display label here for data sets, this is what will actually pull through into the data sets themselves. So if you have a couple different apps, I'd definitely recommend kind of having the app at the beginning of here, and then maybe having a hyphen or some kind of other separator, and then making sure that you kind of clearly label what these are. The API names, so long as they have underscores, they are completely fine. And then you can also assign them to the specific app that you're working in. If you save these to your private app by accident, and then you kind of actually wanted to use them in a separate app, they won't be visible. So just kind of make sure you've definitely saved them to the right location.
Awesome. There actually is another question. If you could, there are a few other examples or of use cases where you would use the transform node. And that's actually something I'm really curious about too. If you wouldn't mind clicking into the transform node and maybe talking a bit about different use cases, kind of obviously this is the one you have here, but if there's any other that you've come across, any general, also a general application with any other clients you've seen, just scenarios where the transform node has come in handy to meet the requirement.
Yeah, sure. I mean, the 4th recipe that we have for today's session kind of goes a little bit more into the use cases for this as well, but you can use the transform node to kind of have like quite a bit of functionality here. So you can split the information within any of the data cells by using the split column. So you could say the delimiter is a dash or a comma. So this would be good if you imported a CSV. You could split the CSV into numerous columns within B2BMA. You wouldn't have to kind of pre-split that. You can make new columns from certain information. You can kind of name the columns as you add them in. You can also change to uppercase, lowercase, replace certain columns. As I mentioned earlier, you can change dimensions to measures and dates. So say you had a field that kind of was imported in and B2BMA didn't read it as a date for whatever reason, you could force it to read it as a date here. As I mentioned earlier, you can also edit the attributes, and that's good for when you want to kind of pull through information from an external source. So you would have to rename the columns to make it a bit more legible. You also have custom formulas, and this is where you'll be able to use a huge variety of different functions in the same way that you would be able to do so in kind of Excel or any other data transformation tool. So you can change to date format, you can round off numbers, etc. So there are so many different, I'm just going to move that up there, so many different use cases for this. It's incredibly flexible.
Right, thank you. Sorry for hijacking. There were some questions in here, so.
Oh, it's fine. I can't see the board at all.
So maybe, I mean, you can answer this now or maybe later, but there's a question about what happens to recipes when you reconfigure the B2BMA app. Do you have to recreate them all over again?
No, so you don't have to reconfigure the recipes, but if you've kind of changed anything on the dashboard that you're reconfiguring from the recipe, you would have to reformat that, but the recipes themselves should be completely fine.
Awesome, thank you.
Perfect. So the next one I've got is in a Pardot asset related one. So this is marketing link. So this pulls through custom redirects. And unfortunately, I only have one custom redirect because this is a dev org. But in anyone else's org, this would have all the different custom redirects that you use. So these would be fantastic if you wanted to report on clicks from external sources. So if you use Pardot redirect on your external ads or on third-party suppliers, etc., you could pull that through here and then add it to your current Pardot engagement dashboard to get even more information pulled through from the campaigns and tracked URLs. So for this one, you want to, again, add input data and pull through the marketing link and the campaign nodes. Then drag campaign onto marketing link until you get a join. And this join is campaign ID to campaign ID with a lookup relationship. And then just apply. Again, we're going to use the transform node just to clean up the data. And here I changed the campaign.name column label just a campaign name. So I've removed the full stop in there so that it was a bit more legible for when we actually pull this data set into a lens or a recipe, a dashboard, sorry. And then finally on the output node here, I've just labeled this custom redirects by campaign, saved it to my private app, and this is the way that the data will pull through. So you have the name of the custom redirect, the target URL, so where this URL is actually going to, how many clicks in total versus unique, and the campaign name that was attributed to.
Very cool.
Yeah, so this one's a bit more of a simple one, but it is definitely useful when you have third-party links that are kind of being tracked from external ads. Quite a few clients have used custom redirects, and there's no real way to track them. Okay, so then the next one we have is campaign with campaign member information in here. So the output node is basically going to generate the expected revenue in the campaign and then populate the lead source from that information. So you'll be able to see which revenue sources give you the most return. So for this one, you want to pull through campaign and campaign member and drag campaign member onto the campaign node until you get a join. For this one, you want a right join because there will be numerous different campaign members to each campaign. So you can see here the right-hand side node would be the campaign member. So you want all campaign members connected to the existing campaigns. And the join is going to be campaign ID to campaign ID. Okay. And
And
then
what is the transform doing?
this one should have been to rename one of the columns, but I think I've just forgotten to press save here. This is a good example of this, so now I can do it from fresh. So expected revenue in campaign, you just edit attributes. And we can just change that to say expected revenue. Then apply, and you can see it changes the column name there. Again, this is kind of more for data cleanliness and making it easier when you add it into the dashboard yourself, because there tend to be so many different labels and node names once you actually add it in that it can be quite a lot of information, especially if you've got a bigger recipe.
Yeah. Is it possible, like, so, like this is kind of curious to me. So is it possible to do something where you've got, in the event that you do have a expected revenue for the campaign value, if there's a value in that field, is there a way to connect that to the current, like a roll-up value of current opportunity value associated with that campaign using a
Yes,
recipe?
yes. So that's actually within one of the functions inbuilt into B2BMA. You can have the sum, and because expected revenue is kind of like a dimension that you can roll up in that way, so you'd have to go in and then select sum, and then expected revenue. So you'd have the sum of expected revenue, then you can filter by lead source or add that into a kind of filter on the top of a dashboard, and you'd be able to see top lead sources for the whole campaign.
Okay, cool. There's a question. Is there the ways to build a report, all emails sent by prospect or activities by prospect to see which prospects are most engaged in the entire org? Is that something that a recipe would do, or something that existing engagement data sets would do? Essentially organized by prospect versus campaign. Or
Yes,
sorry, prospect via campaign.
yeah, so you definitely can do that. Unfortunately, I can't kind of show that because this is a development org and there's no real data in there. But you would be able to do that by pulling in the prospect activity data set, and then from there you kind of pull in the I think it's called the actor ID or the activity actor ID, the thing that connects the activity to the actual prospect itself. And then you can add in the marketing link node, the marketing form node, etc., any kind of external ID, feed it through to the Pardot prospect, and then you can filter in campaigns based on the campaign node as well. And then once you actually have that recipe, you can add it in, add an external filter on the top hand side to say filter by campaign or filter by asset name, and you would be able to pull through a list of all the prospects who've ever completed that action.
Excellent, thank you.
No problem. Yeah, I think B2BMA is definitely one of those things where the possibilities are so vast, but the resources just aren't there to kind of teach people how to use it.
Yep.
So the final one, just before we go into showing you how to set up the lenses, is an account-based one. So we have opportunities by accounts, and the output for this will show opportunity created, the amount that generated, and also how old the account is. And this will essentially be able to roll up the account age and how much the value of all won opportunities of all time have been generated for this account. So you'll be able to see how at what rate new opportunities are created for accounts, and then the opportunity value based on the rate at which the opportunities are generated. So essentially, you'll be able to see value generated per account by day, by week, by month, to target your most profitable accounts. So first one you want to pull in from the input data is account and then opportunity, and drag opportunity onto account. The join node will then be inner join an account ID to account ID. So then that pulls through all opportunities that have accounts and only opportunities that are assigned to accounts. And then on transform, this one actually has quite a few customized pieces. So on the edit labels here, I just changed the opportunity name to make something a little bit more legible. So I removed the full stop there, so it just reads opportunity name. Then I created a new field on the far right-hand side to format today's date. And once you've actually created the recipe, this reformats itself every single day, which is perfect if you want things to be calculated based on days since or days before today. So to do that, you just go into the functions, and then you would have now. So it returns today's date, and you can set the date format. So you want to make sure the date format matches the created date here. So it would have to be year, month, day. And you change the transformation name to today's date. And then once you press apply, it will give you the today's date column on the right-hand side like that. Then I've created a new column here, so returning the duration between dates. So this returns the number of days between the created date of the account and the days based on today to give you account age. So for this one, you want to click on the created date of the account. And then you want to say date difference. So return duration between dates. So for this one, you want to rename it to be account age. You know, the days between the account date created and the today's date column that you just made. Return the duration in days, create a new column, keep the original, and then change the column to account age. Then when you press apply, you'll get something just like this column here. So because this dev.org is, of course, quite old, and all of the opportunity accounts for the opportunities were created on the same day, we have quite a few that read the same. But I did also have a test account that I made for this purpose. So finally pull through the output data here, and I've just called this opportunities by account age. Okay, so now that we've built all the recipes, we can walk through how to actually add these into lenses and dashboards. So for the parents with or campaigns with parent information, just click into the new lens.
Could you explain what a lens is real quick, just at a really high level, before we
Yeah, sure.
go into the building process?
Yeah, so a lens is a kind of exploration into a data set. So you can delve deeper into data sets by creating custom views of each of them. And then when you save a data set just by itself, that's a lens. Whereas when you build a dashboard, that's more of a collection of lenses or a collection of queries. So it's essentially just more of a fragment, whereas a dashboard is the full collection.
Cool, thank you.
No problem. Okay, so for parent campaigns, the most important information that you'd want to pull through is the campaign name. So that's what we're going to do, pull through name. And this is where the labels from earlier really come in handy, so you can see name and parent campaign, and they're ever so slightly different. And then we're going to head to campaign or compare table. So add in name and campaign name. There we go. Just deselecting all of these. Okay. So then you'll have the parent campaign column on the right-hand side here, and then the name of the campaign. So you just kind of switch around the columns, and then I'm going to save that. So new lens, campaigns with parents. And just save that to my private app. And then if you'd like to kind of filter by the campaign alphabetically, you can just kind of click on parents with campaign ID and it will filter by that view and then by that view. So you can see the parent campaign at this level and then the child campaign on the right. None of the others actually have a parent campaign because this is the only one with the test one. So they're all kind of showing values of null or a dash. Then for custom redirects by campaign, this one is going to be quite simple. So it'll just be head to table mode and values table. And I'm just going to take out a couple different IDs because they're not needed. But this one's quite a nice simple one. So if you've just got campaign name on the front here, you can kind of switch the name so that the actual tracked link URL and then the name will be next to each other. And then the campaign name, total clicks and unique clicks. And then once this dashboard is all set up, you'll be able to add this in to a dashboard to kind of show you custom redirect links as well. Ideally, you would have more than one custom redirect on there, but just for demonstration purposes, there's only the one this time.
And the lens. So this lens is now available. Like, so this lens is going to continually, like, as more custom redirects get created, let's say, this is not a static look in time. This is something that will update itself as more custom redirects get created. Is that correct?
Yeah, so now that we've kind of created the recipe, once you save and run it, you'll actually be able to view the recipe itself in here. So for it to update every day, you kind of just click on the bottom side here and schedule, and then in B2BMA you're allowed to schedule this based on the day of the week or the time of the day or even by the month. So you can schedule it on selected days of the month, certain hours of the day. I like to just kind of run it every day. And then once you've selected the schedule, so for example, I do Monday through Friday at midnight European time, click save. And now this is scheduled for every single day and the data will update at midnight daily. You can also run it just to kind of get the initial sync and that will kind of pull through fresh data immediately. But that's especially useful for things that kind of do tend to update quite regularly. So you can change the frequency to hourly if you'd rather have data update quite quickly. But maybe
do recipes error out? Like, do you get errors on these recipes? Like, is that something that happens? They have to keep an eye on?
Yeah, so you can definitely get errors. So that can happen for a number of different reasons. So you can either have the field visibility has been restricted for the B2BMA integration user. Maybe the field has been deleted, or maybe the field ID has been changed, and then it's not been updated within B2BMA. If you do have any errors for whatever reason, they'll be in the jobs monitor, and it will show up as a little red icon. So these have quite a lot of failures, but that's mostly because this is a dev org, and it's trying to show kind of email stats and things that aren't actually being updated because there are no emails.
Yeah.
But if you did have errors, they'd be in the failed tab or in the warning tab as well.
Okay, thank you.
No problem. You can also see usage in here to kind of show you all the different kind of processes that are going on in case you're kind of going near your maximum, which probably won't be the case for many use cases, but occasionally you can have a lot of different pieces of data coming in and out, especially if you have integrations. You can also connect your SFDC local, which is just all of the Salesforce objects, and you can schedule these in the same way as you can the recipes. So if you just kind of do Monday through Friday, midnight, that tends to work quite well, unless you have multiple different connections and multiple different recipes, because if you have them all running at the exact same time, it can cause a little bit of a backlog. But with it being at midnight, that's probably a good time for it to run, because it won't really get in the way of anybody's workload. Okay. And then once you've actually made these new lenses, you'll be able to view them in here as well. So lenses will be saved kind of permanently unless deleted individually. And you can kind of click into them and it will just open up in the exact way as we showed before. So all the different elements will be updated daily or hourly if you selected that on the recipe itself. Okay, so next one I'm going to go into is the top lead sources by the campaign. So first thing, just pull in the campaign name. There are only really 2 campaigns for this dev org. And we'll add in lead source and just kind of switch. So what we can see here is the website tracking campaign has a couple of different lead sources on there. And you can say count of rows, which will basically just bring through however many different counts there are for each lead source. You can also say the average of expected revenue for these things, so you can pull through all different pieces of information. I'm just going to select the unique of lead source. So there is one prospect from the MarCloud test lead source, one from web, and one from test.
Yeah, this is super valuable when you're trying to build. If you've been asked to build a if you're building a dashboard in B2BMA and you need to be able to record on a quarterly basis or on a running basis where the lead sources that are the most successful in terms of volume, of new leads, because that will obviously then help to inform your obviously your marketing decisions. And this kind of data manipulation is obviously, as you can see, can be done. And it's once you've kind of done it a few times, it's like anything else. Once you've kind of figured out some of the particulars, you can certainly reproduce these for yourself in the future. There are some of these things that you could get a flavor of this in the traditional reports and dashboards in Salesforce. You're not going to be able to necessarily get the kind of data manipulation where you're pushing all these different data sources together and doing data transformation at the report level. But that's where B2BMA really kind of shines through and allows you to create these lenses using recipes that are pulling from different data sources that you can then share with both your marketing team and also with your leadership to be able to demonstrate the things that they're asking for. There's a little bit more of a learning curve, but once you've done it a few times, B2BMA becomes a bit less mysterious. It just takes practice because it's something that is underutilized in my opinion. It presents a lot of it can be very overwhelming and confusing for even just a standard Pardot administrator who knows that they have B2BMA, and then they get asked, "Oh, we have it. Go build me reports and dashboards," and it becomes a bit daunting because that's a big ask because it's not as straightforward as perhaps if you're more familiar with standard reports and dashboards. So becoming familiar with the cadence of having your data set, having your data sources to be able to then build a recipe, then using that recipe to build a lens, and then using that lens to put into a dashboard is once you build a few of those, it becomes more it becomes easier and clearer. So I just wanted to kind of step back and level set that kind of why it is that this process exists the way it does. And once you've done it a few times, it becomes a little bit it becomes easier. And I'm sure that Hollie can attest to that. Like when you first started doing this, I'm sure it was not nearly as straightforward as it is now, but now that you've done it several times, it's something that I would think that most even somewhat technically minded Pardot admins could pick up.
Yeah, definitely. I'd say it's definitely something that you kind of need to have a play around with for sure, and kind of explore the different use cases and the capabilities of B2BMA. Maybe even have a look at the documentation that is available and see what transformations are available, the data nodes that can connect, etc. But yeah, it's definitely, once you've had a little bit of exposure to it, it's a lot easier than it seems. Okay, and then for the final one, just before we close this off, so we've got opportunities by account age. So I think this one will be really useful if you're kind of wanting to show maybe your marketing teams which accounts, or your sales teams rather, which accounts are most valuable. So you can have the account name as the main bar, and then I'm going to change the table to compare table. Then have opportunity amount. And average of account days. So essentially what you can see here is the account name, how old the account is, and I did make a test account just yesterday so that you could actually see something that wasn't 609, and added the sum of the amount of the opportunities in there. So I'm just going to quickly change the number format to some currency so that you can see the number there. Then add a new column, and we're going to add a formula. So for this one, we're going to be calling the column amount per day. And for the formula, it's going to be B over A. Oops. Sorry, that was me adding that into the wrong column. So that should be in the column header, amount per day. And then change that to currency and apply. Okay, so then that was a really, really nice one. So you'll be able to see kind of over the course of the age of the account, how much you are making since the account has been created, which is obviously going to be really useful to kind of redistribute your sales team and say, maybe if account Gene Point, for example, is only generating $300 in revenue per day based on the opportunity, maybe they need a bit more of an upsell, or maybe we need to allocate less resource to them. Whereas somewhere like the Grand Hotels and Resorts, they're making, they're making the company $1,500 per day. So that's definitely where you'd want to put more resource. And if we close that one out and then just head to the amount per day filter, sort descending, and you'll actually be able to see your most profitable accounts since their creation per day.
That's super cool.
Yeah, and this one is actually one that we have been asked for before. So this one would be super useful if you kind of just wanted a quick overview of your most profitable accounts, because it's quite, I suppose, difficult to see if, someone did have an opportunity on the account maybe quite some time ago. So you could see the sum of the revenue, how old the account is, and then you could even have a new column in here for maybe the unique of opportunities. So you can actually see how many opportunities there were, how much they were worth, and how much the account is generating per day for the business. Yeah, and that's pretty much everything.
So let's see here, could you just show an example, just kind of complete the process, grab one of those lenses and drop it into a, like, either an existing dashboard that you have in B2BMA or something new, and then be able to see what that data, how the different ways that data can be visualized.
Yeah, sure. So let me save that one. Go up to page. Okay. So if you went into something like this, I mean, I pre-built this one a little earlier. Okay, so you basically just, to add it into a dashboard, use the recipe generated from earlier, and then kind of select the same information. And then once you want to add it in, I'll just delete this one so you can re-add it. You would kind of drag and drop into the dashboard. And it kind of always formats to the full length of the dash, but you can kind of double click into that and edit it in a similar way as you could edit the lens.
And if you wanted to see this in a chart format, you could, if you click back into that,
Mm-hmm.
the top right there, there's the bar chart there.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you could click that. So chart mode will allow you to see this data in different ways. So if you didn't need to see, if there were specific data points that you wanted to see from all of this, then you can remove certain data points there. Yeah, you can also select different charts. I think if you select, there's one of these where you can remove certain data points, certain measures that you don't need to see. In this, I don't remember where it is, but there's a way that you can remove certain measures. So if you have this dashboard, if you have all these data points, we really only need to see specific bars. You can remove certain bar lengths from this because there are certain charts that will work better with certain, when you have a certain number of data points, a certain kind of data outputs. So if you were to remove some of these data points, say, okay, cool, from this lens, I want to build, let's say, a pie chart or something that's stacked or a pyramid or some kind of timeline. Those things together will allow you to say, okay, based on these different things, these measures make more sense, whether it's 4 or 5 or 3 or 1 or 2 or whatever. You can remove them and manipulate the data further so that you can display the data in the way that makes the most sense. You could also create multiples of this data set in a single dashboard. So if this data set is like super important, but you want to be able to hone in on specific parts of it, you can create four different pieces that are using 4 different charts that are honing in on specific data points of this entire lens. So you don't have to use every single one. You can create a bar chart for one, you can create a pie chart for another that is looking at specific data points. Like you could have an entire you can just say, I only want to see account age by days. And then so you would have a pie chart that shows you, or a what's the word I'm looking for? There's just like a number, like where you can say, I just need to see what is the average account age by days. If you would need to see that for some reason, you can manipulate this data where it's only going to show you certain certain pieces. Um, so with that, we have 5 minutes left. I want to, yeah, I think you're right, Brandon. Column selection. Um, if there's anyone that has any questions, please feel free. Um, we've had a few questions come up in the chat. Um, but like I said, we've got 5 minutes here. If you don't have any questions, that's fine too. Um, but yeah, just feel free to put something in the chat if you have a question. My perspective on this is that B2BMA is, like I said before, very underutilized. It's something that, as a Pardot end user, you if you're an internal user, admin, for example, your ability to leverage and become a SME with this tool, I've seen it happen, will endear you to your leadership, because leadership lives and dies on reports and being able to see visualizations of data. And if you're able to demonstrate to use this in a way that is visually appealing and also easy to understand and digest, and can then also make modifications to be able to show them very specific data that's cut certain ways. If you're able to do those things, B2BMA is wonderful. It just, there is a learning curve. If you can kind of commit yourself to try and to learn it, you're not going to become an expert overnight. It's one of those things that kind of just, as you spend more time with it, you become more familiar with how it works, what it can and can't do, how it's, and where, and also be able to distinguish based on a request where someone asks you, hey, I'd like to see XYZ. You're able to just distinguish where it says, okay, I think this actually makes more sense to build as a traditional report or dashboard in Salesforce versus, because it becomes a, is the juice worth the squeeze? Are you going to get the amount of data that the data view, is it going to, what is the level of effort? Can I give you the same or very similar views in a traditional report or dashboard versus how long would it take me to tweak the data to give you a very similar output? So if being able to evaluate and understand what B2BMA is capable of, how it differs from traditional reports and dashboards, what you're able to do and what you're not able to do, I think is also very important. So you can, when you're asked to build a report of Pardot data, for example, you're able to know that, okay, there are certain things that I can already do in traditional reports and dashboards. If they just need to see this one data point, it's going to be a lot easier to build and report or dashboard. But if it's complex, if there's more, if they want to see this grouped against this, filtered through this, that would become more of a B2BMA. So being able to distinguish which makes which makes the most sense to use to meet the requirement is, I think, is important, because you don't necessarily need to spend hours building something that you could build in traditional reports and dashboards in 30 minutes. So being able to distinguish the best use case for the data for the reporting tool, I think, is also important, above and beyond learning the fundamentals of B2BMA, what it can do, what it can't do, and just kind of being able to provide reports that illuminate the data. So Brandon says the biggest part I get caught up on is with recipes for different kinds of data around prospects versus campaigns. So, and that's a great point. I don't think we have time to go deeply into it. Esteban asks, are there any learning resources that you guys can share? Could be a Trailhead module or others. I know that Trailhead does have some stuff on it, but not much. It's so Holly, if there's any resources that you've become aware of that have helped you, please feel free to share.
Yeah, sure. I mean, it's pretty much the Trailhead module that is available. I believe it's called CRM Analytics. So that kind of whole module, it does go quite in depth in that. Other than that, there's the actual kind of SQL resources that are provided from the Salesforce development documentation, which can also help you to build slightly more complex queries, things like that. But yeah, you're right. There is unfortunately not a humongous amount of resource out there for B2BMA.
Yeah, I wish there was, and it doesn't really get covered very much. Here, like I'll put some modules. I just found a couple. There is a module called building dashboards and data sets in B2BMA. So I will put that in there. Yeah, I think you're right. It is called, yeah, Discover CRM Analytics. All right, I'll put some, there's actually a trail for it. So that's cool. I'll put the trail link in the chat here. Good information. I would encourage you to, if you have, I mean, you should be able to get it. If you don't have it already, I would encourage you to try and get yourself a Pardot org. I believe you can implement B2BMA in a dev org. So you can certainly learn on your own and see what's possible. So have both of those in there is super helpful. But thank you, Hollie, very much for taking the time to walk us through all of this. Like I said, I'm going to post this recording to the event and then also to the Pardot Geeks blog. And then I'm sure Tom and others will also, Tom and Hollie will also use this on the website and other places. So thanks again. This was great, super helpful. I hope everyone got some value out of this, and have a good rest of your day, evening, morning, wherever it is you are. Thank you very much.
Thanks for having me. Bye.
Bye.